Welcome to the Hotel Tech Podcast. This is the show where we tackle your most pressing issues to bring your business more wins. Keeping up with technology is challenging. Our experts are here to help you figure it all out. Here's your hosts, Glenn Haussman and Estella Hale.
Hey everybody, and welcome back to the Hotel Tech Podcast. My name is Glenn Haussman, and I want to thank you all for being here with me. And of course, I have my wonderful, amazing, talented co-host Estella Hale, Chief Product Evangelist with SHR, which is of course Scepter Hospitality Resources, and she's definitely one of the top minds in the hospitality technology side of our business. Estella, great to have you here once again with me, hosting the show.
Thank you so much. It's great to be here. It's always fun to tackle even the hard stuff and even the hard topics with you, Glenn. So thanks so much.
Yeah, I'll tell you, it's been so much fun doing this. And that episode we did recently on predictive marketing, it was so interesting to me. We're getting so much great feedback on that particular episode because I think that people are really starting to understand how critical understanding where your customers are not just coming from, but where they're headed to is such a crucial element in our hospitality universe now.
I agree, and I hope that we made it really relevant for them, really in the perspective of a guest and how we meet guests, just like they do on property. So yeah, hopefully a lot of good insights there.
Well, I definitely would argue that we had tons and tons of good insights. And if you haven't listened to that show, everybody be sure to download the podcast, either through you want to go through the No Vacancy with Glenn Haussman podcast link on Apple iTunes, on Google Play, on Stitcher, wherever you could get podcasts. And of course, right there at SHR's website and on NoVacancyNews.com. So we have a great guest with us today. He's the host of the Fuel Marketing podcast, a show I happen to have been on and like a whole lot. Mr. Stuart Butler is the COO of Fuel Marketing, and he's here to talk about a great new study that they did, the 2018 Hospitality Technology Study. Are hoteliers and vendors on the same page? Fascinating. Welcome aboard, Stuart. How are you today?
Hey, Glenn, it's great to be back on the show. I've been listening to this technology series you've been doing with SHR. It's been phenomenal. Finally, great. You've had some great insights on the show and finally some intelligent conversations.
Well, yes, it's great. That's all because of Estella. At the No Vacancy podcast that I do on my own, the only time I had intelligent conversation was when you were a guest on.
You figured out.
Yeah.
That's exactly right. Yeah, I took a swipe at myself there, right?
Well, that's what we got to do. It keeps us legit.
We're going to have you in every show now.
Seriously, I really have enjoyed it. It's been great kind of digging in, not just kind of talking about what's going on, but looking at the future of technology too, which is what we're all involved in here at Fuel, for sure.
That's great. And when you listen to the Fuel Marketing podcast, they got great shows and like how you can optimize Google for your business, ways to fix your hotel marketing campaign. What about that voice search thing? Is it, finally killing SEO? Lots of really great, interesting topics. I urge you to listen to that. But today, Stuart, we want to talk to you all about this incredible survey that you put out there. Why don't you give us a little top line about what motivated you for the survey, and then we can get into some of the big findings that you've arrived at.
Yeah, so really this started out, I'd say about 6 or 7 months ago. We were talking to a couple of our vendor friends, StayNTouch, the PMS company, and Flip.to, the advocacy marketing platform. And we were just talking about how could we, help the industry? How could we look at some of the challenges we're facing, make sure we're seeing the right challenges, and then start a conversation within the industry at how to solve some of those. So we decided we'd go out and we'd survey hundreds of not just hoteliers, but also vendors too. We really wanted to see, are we all on the same page? What are the challenges we're facing? What are the opinions of current technology, and how do we fix that? So we did a bunch of self-reporting studies, and we just compiled this list, and we're finally now ready to unleash it on the world. We actually had a printed preview of this at High Tech this year that a bunch of folks kind of got hold of, and we started getting vendor feedback from folks like SHR. And so we asked them to give us some of their notes and their biggest findings and takeaways. And so the new version we just launched now actually has some excerpts from folks like Navis and Revenate and at Trust You, bunch of guys that given us, their opinion on what we found as well as ours as well. So it's really a collaboration of the industry at large. All those kind of forward-thinking vendors have come together to try to help the industry move forward in the positive direction.
And I think it reflects it, Stuart. I really do. When I was reading it, I found myself nodding quite a bit. So I think it does reflect the perspective of so many of us, both from the technology and the hotelier perspective, and our voice is reflected there.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, and it reinforced a lot of our notions, but it was really good to see not just that the vendors are saying these things, but also the hoteliers themselves are seeing the same challenges and willing to face them and try to find a solution.
What I find interesting is that the hoteliers and the suppliers, while both wanting to achieve the same goal, their priorities, they seem that the challenges are a little bit different. Why don't you explain to us what those top three technology challenges are that are facing hotels today, both from the hotelier perspective and also from the supplier perspective?
Yeah, for sure. So essentially, we saw that a lack of integration was a theme throughout all the questions. And we asked questions from, what are the challenges, but are you satisfied with your current providers? Where are they lacking? Where do you look to invest? Things like that. And again and again, both the hotels and the suppliers as well said overwhelmingly integration is the biggest problem that we're facing. And I really agree with that. So for the most part, they were on the same page. Where they differed a little bit was on the prioritization of that, in terms of the hoteliers were a little more concerned with things like increasing cost, whereas the suppliers were more focused on innovation and not so concerned about if that meant a cost increase as long as it meant a better ROI at the end of the day. So, yeah, it's kind of interesting. I think for the most part we're on the same page, but the price is always going to fall probably on the hotelier side a little more than the vendor side.
I agree. And looking at that particular top three challenges, what caught my eye, Stuart, is that number three, both on the hotelier and the supplier side, is the consumer expectation. It's meeting the guest where the guest is and where the guest is expecting that we meet them. And so for me, it made sense that a supplier perspective, we put innovation as a high priority, because that is what is needed to meet the guest where they are. But from a hotelier perspective, they do want to meet the guest where they are, but they want to do it in a way where the value provided meets the cost for it.
Yeah, for sure. And that's kind of a narrative that we saw throughout as well, which was, when the vendors are creating these solutions, we're really doing it, for the ultimate consumer. A lot of vendors are looking at the hotel's guest as the ultimate consumer, but we also can't take away from the fact that the hotelier themselves is also the consumer, because they happen to use the product. So if the technology is too complex, or in an industry where we have so much turnover, you've really got to focus not just on the innovation of what it means from an ROI perspective, the guest engagement perspective, the guest experience perspective, but also, is it easy to use, and is the hotel going to maximize the functionality of the tool? If they're not, obviously, if it's not easy to use, but hopefully we're creating tools that make it easy for them as well.
Hey, Stuart, when you're talking about consumer expectations, is the fear about not meeting those current expectations? You're both using that phrase, meet them where the consumer is. Or is maybe there is a layer of this in the consumer expectations seem to be morphing at such a rate that maybe it's just harder to keep up with that constant flow of change?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, the consumer technology that they're actually using in their day-to-day lives has accelerated so fast over the last few years. I mean, you look at how voice search has really taken off, how smart assistants, voice assistants has taken off. And, hotels really don't have that kind of technology. And we're used to, as a consumer set, going from our home to a hotel and having the same creature comforts. We went through a small transition when Wi-Fi came about, where we didn't have it in our house and we didn't have it in our hotels, and then we got it in our house, and then a little bit later we got it in our hotel. And now I'm
still waiting for some hotels to have it, Stuart.
Yeah, you're right. You're exactly right. I mean, I always still, when I'm going to a new hotel, check to make sure they mention free Wi-Fi or Wi-Fi somewhere on the website. But we expect when we turn on a faucet that the water's going to run out. We expect to have some kind of way to control the temperature, because that's what we have in our house. So, I really am a believer that if we're used to using a device with our voice, whether it's our cell phones, whether it's an Amazon Echo or Google Home, we're going to expect that ultimately in the hotel. So we got to make our hotel rooms voice enabled. Maybe not quite yet, although Amazon's making a big push with their hospitality toolkit now. We just got accepted onto the beta for that to kind of build innovation, things like check in and check out and room service through voice. But I think it's something that we're going to expect as consumers. And some of the vendors actually touched on that in the kind of their feedback portions at the end. If you read through some of those, they were talking about, we asked the question, where do you see guest experience in 10 years? And a lot of the vendors talked about the concept of bring your own device. Like, people don't necessarily want technology that's in the way. They want technology that's frictionless and easy and intuitive and it just works and makes their life easier. So the concept of you bring whatever that device is, your cell phone, to the room, and it's the device that controls the thermostat and the lights and the TV and all that stuff. I think that's something that I know Hilton's really looking at heavily, and a lot of the vendors for the independent market are looking at heavily as well.
And maybe with all of this new technology and with this frontier of once it's available in our home, we expect it available in the property. That's why the number one challenge and something that we all strive for from a hotelier and supplier perspective is really that integration, because at the end, the hotels want to welcome, they want to delight the guests, they're in the hospitality industry, and then they have to deal with all of these other technologies in order to provide this to the guest. If they don't have a good integration, then it's harder for them to do their job. And so part of it also, I was surprised to see how low the results were for satisfaction with providers. Were you surprised at all?
Yeah, yes and no. And I think, if you look at that question, the technology that ranked lowest was PMS, which makes sense because the majority of properties still are on these legacy PMS systems, which have been very slow to integrate with newer technology. And we're kind of at this tipping point of the industry where you've got the old guards, the operas of the world that traditionally haven't wanted to integrate with people or make it very cost prohibitive to integrate with people, but they have a large installation base and a full feature set. And then you've got these new folks that are coming up that don't have the feature set yet. They're not quite a mature enough product for some more complex properties to jump onto, but they're completely the opposite. They have open APIs that they want everyone to integrate with. And I feel like the majority of vendors, certainly the ones that have cropped up in the last 5 or so years, have that ladder mentality where it's, hey, here's my API. I'm not going to charge a connection fee. I'm not going to charge anything to certify integration. Just have at it, So I think we're on the cusp of, a lot of new innovators in the industry being able to connect with each other, and then also these legacy PMS systems really waking up to that fact that they need to embrace it. And you're seeing for the first time, we're at High Tech this year, had some really good positive conversations for the first time with PMS companies. Folks like Springer Miller, who one of the greatest products out there, has been around for a long time, but traditionally wasn't, bigger integration. They've completely flipped that and really looking to integrate and innovate and bring new products to their customers and focus on what they do really well, the PMS, and let the other vendors provide best in breed products around their PMS.
Yeah, I think that makes a whole lot of sense, Stuart, because at least from my point of view, I was looking at this number, 55.2% of hoteliers are not satisfied with their PMS provider, but I was scratching my head, and then you said a lot of this has to do with the legacy providers, and I think that these older companies have to make that decision whether or not they want to join the 21st century, and if they continue to be a closed type of a system, I think that their lifeline is going to be coming to a conclusion really, really soon, because I see, at least for me, and you two experts tell me, but I think Open API has got to be the way you're going to go in order to meet the future challenges, including those critical consumer expectations, and create that sense of innovation that could keep coming.
Yeah, 100% agree. And, the other thing I noticed at High Tech, there were two things really related to that conversation. One is the booths like Opera were a lot emptier than typical, and there were more people buzzing around some of the newer PMS kind of companies. So there's definitely, in talking to those folks, there's a lot of people looking to shift. But then I also saw a lot of vendors in the space are getting into this kind of middleware data gateway kind of territory, where they're trying to become the conduit by which integration can occur. There's a lot of folks out there now that, Navis is getting into that, Happy was getting into that, Snapshot's getting into that. There was probably 4 or 5 others that are trying to provide this kind of data layer between all the different vendors and be that central hub for communication. So I think we're on the cusp of some really big innovation in the space related to integration.
I'm a little confused. Isn't middleware where Lord of the Rings took place? I'm not sure what that has to do with technology.
Middle of,
yeah, right, okay.
That's what it feels like. It feels like we're walking towards the volcano. No, I'm kidding. Only with some vendors. But another insight, Stuart, that was really interesting to me. Yes, I agree. I think there's light at the end of the tunnel. I think the standards that are coming out, the fact that we have platforms that are more open to interact with each other, and that we find richness and strength in that collaboration is great. But also, I thought I saw on the insights that there was also some metrics regarding the dissatisfaction with the service. So maybe the product is there. Granted, we know we're lacking in the integration side, but also the service. And from a technology provider perspective, I've always believed that the layer of service that you give over your technology is really what makes the difference for someone to operate it in the way that best works on their profile versus the one size fits all, which really doesn't fit anybody. I don't know. What did you think of those insights regarding service satisfaction?
Yeah, and that's something we want to drill down into a little more. So our plan is to do multiple versions of this study, over the years, and drill into those kind of questions, because it is a good insight. I think it was Ricky Dunbar from Flip.to kind of came up with that notion that which are we looking at here? And to be honest, we didn't ask it that way. We asked, which of these products are you least satisfied with? So we feel like people could be criticizing the service, because as we all know, especially as we all innovate, the difference between the top 5, say, booking engines or CRMs or eCRMs on the market, the top 5 best of breed products, each of them has their strengths and weaknesses, but at the end of the day, they all do a very good job. They're in the top 5 for a reason. So the difference really does come down to training, to support, to responsiveness, to the relationship with the vendor. And I think what we're seeing is the products and the companies that are being more successful now are the ones that put the emphasis on that relationship. So, yeah, I agree 100% that service could be a big factor as to why people like or don't like the products, because we can all tolerate something that's a little bit, subpar if we know that someone's got our back, that partner's got our back. So I agree 100%. No, we did get one comment, because we had a couple of free form kind of questions in there, and one of them we asked the hoteliers specifically was, what piece of advice would you give the vendors? And one individual wrote that he wishes the vendors would stop pretending to be partners and remember that they're only vendors, which only one person said that. But I'm like, wow, dude, you're bent out of shape about something that you really should be looking at it from a different perspective. But yeah.
Wow, that's a shame.
We try to be partners, and
so,
I'm sure you guys do too. It is.
Stuart, I'm curious.
I have his email address. I can name names.
Stuart, I'm curious. I'm looking at these results, and you have a certain percent not at all satisfied, and a certain percent of less than satisfied. How much of this do you think is because people just aren't taking the time to educate themselves about how to use these tools properly? So perhaps they're not getting full benefit of them, and therefore it's coloring their experience with it when it comes to answering a survey question.
Yeah, I think that goes back to what Estella was saying, which is, the service is critical, because we see, our top performing clients on ad software are the ones that leverage the majority of the feature set, and the ones that end up disgruntled or asking us, well, this isn't performing the way you said it would, are the ones that don't leverage the opportunity that's there, right? So we've got to work harder with them to train them, and when they have the inevitable turnover, train the new person that's taken over that responsibility, and make sure that the technology that they're using doesn't fall into this kind of limbo between departments. And I think that's another challenge that really we didn't talk about in this study, but one that we see again and again in the industry is if you look at any other industry, and we have a big history in the retail space. We used to work with a lot of online retailers, and to them, the things like the pricing and the marketing team, so in what we would consider rate management or rate optimization or rate strategy and in the marketing team, in every other industry, that's one team. It's not siloed like it is in hospitality. And I think we're moving towards those being bridged together. But I think sometimes some of these technologies, like a booking engine, can fall in the gap between the marketing team and the operations team or the folks managing rate, because the rate team has to be doing the merchandising, coming up with packages and the rates and stuff. But then the marketing team are responsible for making sure that it looks great and it's getting distributed well, and that it's being tracked properly and that the reporting is accurate. And that's one of the other things that this report kind of shone a light on, which was no one's really happy with the level of analytics that they have. A lot of people were dissatisfied with their level of integration. But then when we asked them towards the end of the survey, what are they looking to invest in? Not a whole lot were looking to invest in analytics. It wasn't one of their top priorities. So I think it came
that was
third on the list.
Now, I got to tell you, I can understand why some of this not at all satisfied thing is happening, or less than satisfied thing is happening based on what you said. But I'd like to add the component. I go to so many of the major hotel company annual meetings, and they go to great pains every year to roll out all of these great new opportunities and benefits about being part of the brand to help empower hoteliers and their teams to be more successful. And then you come back a year later, and they're introducing new stuff because a good chunk of folks didn't even bother to go ahead and learn all of the stuff that they were paying for. So I think that this industry also has a problem of not utilizing the tools to the fullest advantage that they have. And I'm very concerned about this in a big way, especially since this survey here shows 21.8% don't even use something like a CRS. That's crazy talk.
Yeah, it was very interesting to us, some of these responses in terms of technologies they're not using. But, I mean, we see it too. I mean, people don't use the features unless they use it regularly or unless they're really trained to understand the benefit of it. I mean, we literally had a large client recently. We have a mobile app solution for check-in, check-out, and we had a large client saying, we're really not using this right now because we're too busy doing X, Y, Z. And the X, Y, Z were things that really aren't generating revenue. So we had a conversation with them about, okay, let's look at this from an ROI perspective and a guest satisfaction perspective. If you can improve your guest satisfaction and drive up your ADR, and you can offer additional services, if you just put a little bit of effort behind this, all these other things you're trying to do go away. You don't have to mess with those because you're really focused in the wrong area. So I think a lot of folks, and it comes back to what I was saying earlier about things falling through the cracks. People get focused on certain parts of the operation of the hotel, and they kind of lose sight of the big picture. Can't see the forest for the trees kind of syndrome.
Yeah, no, I agree. It was interesting to see on the insights that their hotels are struggling with integrations, they're struggling with data, yet they ranked at the lowest to integrate data or integrate analytics. But again, it is because they are under the tyranny of the urgent. So, some other things, again, that were great to see was the importance of ease of use as an important factor, for example, for a PMS perspective that both hotelier and supplier want. So in those places where priorities meet, I think some of these other things can advance. So if you show the ease of use, and like in the example that you gave of that particular client, then show the ROI, then they feel the relief of moving from under the tyranny of the urgent to something that is so important and so relevant. So again, I think some of these points that we're in the same page on can drive some of the other ones that appear disconnected.
Yeah, I agree. And following up on that, the PMS question. So the actual question we asked was, when considering a PMS, what factors are most important? And we ranked the top 5. And you're exactly right. Ease of use and API integration were the top 2. It was really interesting. This is the only time we saw this where Hoteliers actually ranked support as number 3 and price as number 4, whereas suppliers had that flipped. So Hoteliers actually value this level of support from a PMS more than they consider the price when they're selecting a PMS. Suppliers thought it was the opposite way around. So a little bit of a discrepancy.
Yeah, that's pretty insightful. All right, I got one more point that I think is extremely fascinating on all of this information you uncovered. And for everyone listening, we'll give you some information on where to get this survey at the end, because there's so much in here we couldn't share it all with you on the show. But one interesting fact is, you asked a question, on average, how long does it take a property to evaluate and choose a new technology solution? Your average number of months, 11, and 42% says it takes 12 to 18 months. That's insane, because by the time you make a decision, you already might be 2 versions away, or some other new technology might be coming along. Why do you think this is, and what can we do about it?
Yeah,
I know, it's crazy.
A little concerning. I mean, as a vendor in the space, we all kind of know that there's an incubation period, and things can take long, and you can work on the relationship and introduce someone to a product, and then it just sits and it waits. And I think there's a couple of reasons for that. I think one is the turnover we inevitably have in the industry, and decision makers change and priorities change as that goes along. But I also feel like, we as an industry have not really been at the cutting edge of technology. We have not innovated. We've been slow to adopt new things. We're stuck on legacy tools, but partly because of the integration, but partly because I think we, as an industry, we don't focus on the education side of the value of new technology. And there's a lot of people that are really good at hospitality, really good at operations, but a little bit fearful of new technology. And when you start talking to people about, hey, this latest CRM has artificial intelligence baked in, they get a little scared and concerned, and they kind of kick the can down the street because they don't want to jump into something until they know other people that have tried it and have proven it, or they've seen it be successful somewhere else. So we're definitely, compared to other industries, like I said, we do things a little bit differently, or a lot differently, but one of those things is we're a little slower to adopt new technology, I feel like.
I agree with that. And is it fair, Estella, maybe I'll ask you this question when it comes to adopting new technologies. In your experience, does it make sense to be a leader in adopting some of these new technologies? Because you don't know if they're going to be around for a super long time. You don't know how the customer is going to react to them, and then you've got to really just take a chance. Is that all of that coming together? Is it worth taking on those challenges in order to introduce a new technology? Or maybe the reason why we're not ahead is because people realize that maybe we don't need to be innovating as much as we need to.
No, I think the answer is definitely yes. It is worth it.
Cool.
But again, because the hotels are under the tyranny of the urgent, and they are getting news constantly about whatever's new, whatever's a new shiny object. There's hype about a lot of things. And like Stuart was saying, there's also fear of, okay, I don't understand this piece, so I'm not sure if I should integrate it or not. So I think the first step is for hotels to really embrace the fact that they know their property the best, and they can figure out their guest profile the best. Starting with that in mind, then they can go and evaluate these technologies, just like the evaluation that Stuart did for the client example that he did earlier, and say, okay, how does this technology fit with ROI and guest satisfaction in the profile of the property that I'm playing and in the profile of the guest that I'm serving? If they start with that base, they can probably say, these 10 things do not apply to me. I can quiet that noise, and I can go and if you will, risk a little bit of time, effort, or what have you on this ones that I believe will serve the profile of my property, will serve the profile of my guest, or the cause for which guests are traveling to my property. So I think it's definitely worth it.
Excellent. Stuart, what about you?
I think also the other challenge we have is the industry media that we follow so astutely. There's a lot of noise. There's so much. I mean, you're talking about all the technologies that you're not sure if you should jump onto or not.
Right.
Think about how much blockchain has been talked about in the industry for probably 24 months now. Blockchain,
right.
blockchain.
And there's at least 2 or 3 people who understand it, so it's going great.
Right. Yeah, and it's not something. So, one of the things we did ask at the end of the survey was, where are you looking to change investment in the next 12 to 24 months? Unfortunately, people aren't believing the hype for blockchain. That was ranked lowest in terms of people looking to invest in it. And at the very top was guest experience, mobility, and analytics, which I think are 3 things we would all agree could definitely be improved. And then 4th was integration. Interestingly, integration was 4th, even though people have said that that's probably the biggest issue facing our industry. So,
Interesting. Well, we're getting.
But again, because you said investment. Remember the disconnect between cost and
well, that's
and
true.
what you expect for it. So that's super super interesting.
All right, Stuart, is there anything else in the survey that you feel that we should discuss right now?
I think we covered the big things. I mean, I think our takeaways were that, the hotels and the suppliers are mostly on the same page. There's a few discrepancies that we kind of touched on. Guest experience was the number 1 priority across the board for both sides of the fence. The biggest challenge facing us is integration, no question. And then, the other thing I would say is it's very apparent that everyone is struggling with data and what to do with it, how to track, what to track, and how to get insight out of the data in a meaningful way. I think those are the big things. But there's so many questions in here, so much data. You can actually go download a copy of this right now. It's available online at fueltravel.com. Fueltravel.com/tech study. So
Great.
fueltravel.com/tech study.
And if that's too complicated, just send an email to info@fueltravel.com, and I'm sure they'll be able to help you out there. Now, before we say goodbye to you, Stuart, I want to hear a good, fun fact about you. I'm thinking about artificial intelligence, and I want to know what your thoughts are on the future of artificial intelligence as it relates to Westworld.
Really, that could go into some very scary ways.
Yes.
I think we're not too far away. If you look at the innovation of AI and robotics, over the last 2-3 years, and you look at how fast it's accelerating, we're not too far away from that being a potential reality. But I think anyone that's kind of doubting the power of AI, you're probably using it right now and not even realizing it. There's so many things are baking AI into them now. I know a lot of the technology vendors in the hotel space are using AI. We're beginning to use it in our CRM technology and our booking engine technology to do things that just we couldn't physically do before now. Being able to leverage data to do predictive modeling is something that is going to have a real meaningful benefit to the industry now, and then certainly in the next 12, 24 months. But I'm really just waiting until robots get to where I can have my own C-3PO and R2-D2, and then I'll be happy, man.
All right. I love that. And my fun fact today will be that I totally believe, and this is a fact, and it's fun, Skynet takes over in 2037. So that's my prediction. Mark it down here.
2037.
Yeah.
I'm putting it on my calendar. Are you going to call a specific date?
November 23rd, actually. It's going to be a pre-Thanksgiving takeover. We're going to be busy thinking about turkey, and boom, all of a sudden it's all over. So, guys, write in 2037 in December. Let me know if I was right, if Skynet will let you do that. And Estella, anything that you want to wrap up with before I bring it all home?
Oh, just to thank Fuel Travel, Flip.to, and Stay in Touch for this study. It's just really great, and definitely recommend for our audience to go and check it out.
Yeah, excellent. Stuart, any final thoughts? It's a great time for you to pitch the Fuel Hotel Marketing Podcast.
Yeah, no, thanks for having me on again, Glenn. I appreciate it. We'll have to have you guys on our show at some point. If you guys like Glenn's show, you like listening to podcasts, then check us out. It's the Fuel Hotel Marketing Podcast. You can just search for Fuel Hotel Podcast or Hotel Marketing Podcast, and we'll show up anywhere you get your podcasts.
Be great. Awesome. Thank you so much. And I want to thank everybody today for listening. Another great show. I'm excited. What a great conversation that we had today. I highly encourage everybody to go get this survey from Fuel, Flip.to, and Stay in Touch. Really interesting statistics. There's a lot more in here that we didn't have a chance to talk to. And if you want to catch up on the podcasts that we've already released in this series, you can find this show recording and all past shows on SHR's website, and that's at shr.global. And of course on NoVacancyNews.com and on the No Vacancy podcast feed. Be sure to give us some likes. Be sure to subscribe at Apple iTunes, at Apple Podcasts, at Google Play, and all of that kind of good stuff. And I think that just brings us about home. So for Estella Hale and myself, thanks so much for listening to the Hotel Tech Podcast. We'll be back with another episode real soon. Take care.